My name is Mike J. Marin. I'm Navajo, Laguna Pueblo, and Washoe. I'm an award-winning independent filmmaker, action figure photographer, and I suffer from depression. When I was a kid, I started off with little green army men, plastic army men. And every time my mom and I would go to the grocery store, I would get like a bag of army men if I was good. In 1977, after the first Star Wars came out, I remember we were at the now defunct Montgomery Ward's. I was in the toy section and I saw the first action figures from Star Wars and I wanted them so bad. I remember my first ones were, an Imperial Stormtrooper and an Imperial Death Squad Trooper. Ever since then, it was like anytime I got rewarded for good behavior, my grades or just doing my chores or whatever, I would get rewarded with action figures. And amassed a pretty big collection when I was a kid. I'm a digital artist. I don't have the resources to shoot practical. I don't have a backyard or firecrackers. So the process, I'll get a figure, find a good background, and then I'll look at that background and see where my light sources are. If there's a light source, where's that light source coming from? Then after that, I add effects. If there's leaves falling, if there's gunfire, if dirt flying or a snowstorm. Sometimes it takes me 3 to 4 hours to do one picture because of all the effects, because maybe I don't like the position the figure is in. And one of the most challenging things is fight scenes. Doing fight scenes with them, because you have to make it look real. Like anybody can stand like 1920s boxer and do that, but especially with comic book action figures like my Marvel Legends or my DC figures, you have to make your figure dance. You have to make it look like it would in a comic book.
It's almost like looking at a movie shot. That's what I really love about it. It's like a movie still of like this, so you can see the flow of the action. The creativity of like trying to even create that shot is amazing. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of creativity to project it. And I know he's done multiple takes before he's got that final one. I'm Chris Mitchell. I work here at the Comic Bug in Culver City. I've been with the Bug for coming up to like 5 years now. That creativity, that helps us. It gets us out of just isolating only on ourselves, but to look outwards. It's like, I want to project this to these people. I want to show this shot. And it makes you think creatively. So you're not focusing so much on the negative aspects of yourself. Like, what can I do with this? That creativity really helps a lot.
I grew up predominantly as an 80s kid. We had the best of everything. I'll argue with anybody about that. We had the best movies, the best music, the best food, the best TV shows, the best video games. I mean, we had it all. And it was all there for all of us to enjoy. I was all about universal horror, Frankenstein, Dracula, all those, the classics. And then once Night of the Living Dead got into this head, I had to see everything else after that. Every horror movie. Native kids, we're not afraid of anything. We're not afraid of anything. And I think that's because there's so much more real horror that's out there, For horror to be effective, right? It has to come from within, because you have to know fear. The more figures progressed and the more the movies progressed. And I just, I got so into it by creating my own stories with the figures, which is what I do now.
Really what he's doing when he takes pictures of his collectibles is telling a story in a single frame or a series of frames. Across the various forms of art that he's done, he's always been a storyteller. My name is Ananda Maria Marin. I'm a UCLA professor in the Department of Education and faculty in American Indian Studies. When he can tap into that passion, it gives him a reason to get up the next day and to do something. And that is probably one of the hardest things when you're depressed, is finding that reason to get up.
2020 was a shit year for all of us. And in that time, it was hard for me because I'm an extrovert. I'm an extrovert because I love to be around people. I love to belong to a tribe, a herd, a pack. And when you're told by fate you got to stop because I'm coming for you. And you're immunocompromised. You know, I'm diabetic, high blood pressure. So I had to be safe, you know, couldn't be around people. So I had to shut myself in. And that sucked. And then I hear people close to me are getting sick. My own family members are getting sick. And I wasn't there for them.
The March when we got the call, it was an interesting feeling of like a creeping dread. I think that was the most horror-based time that we've ever really experienced in our modern society. It was a very eerie silence. And if you're a fan of film, if you've ever seen like dystopian future films, it's always bleak over skies, people wearing masks, there's rolling clouds, nobody's doing anything. It looks like things are just decrepit and, you know, shelled and shell-shocked. That was kind of that feel that we had throughout the whole thing. And that's definitely what I was feeling at that point. It felt like I was living some dystopian future and this was going to be how the world will be from this day forward, kind of a feel.
At first, it started with him not being able to sleep. Just one day where it's like I couldn't sleep and I stayed up all night. And then it was the next day he couldn't sleep. And the next day after that, he couldn't sleep. And it really just became this cycle that it was hard for him to get out of. And I remember him actually crying because he couldn't sleep.
I didn't sleep for 7 days. My weight at the time, pre-pandemic, was like 320. Within a matter of 7 days, my weight dropped down to 285 in a week. It's just a very low point in my life. I just didn't want to do anything. Add on top of that, feeling like a piece of shit because why couldn't you fight off your abusers? Why couldn't you fight off the people that, you know, that's why you're in this position? It's like every negative thing in my life just pulled my skull cap open and was just pouring it in there. You know, salt on a wound. As a young man growing up, when I was little, I was sexually abused by a babysitter for a number of days. And I never told anybody, you know. You always look to your family to protect you, right? Because they're supposed to. When your family members hear other people teasing you about your weight and you look to them to defend you, but then they're sitting there laughing with everybody else, and then they start to join in that shit talking with everybody else. How are you supposed to feel? You know? Do you feel protected? Do you feel regarded? No. And that's hard because you want to love them. You feel you have to love them. And then deep down inside, you start to question it. Do I really want to be around these people? Do these people really deserve my love, my respect, my trust? Because that's the thing, right? Is you want to trust people that are your family. But it's hard when you don't.
First, I didn't really know what to do. If he doesn't do something, this is just going to get worse. In my family, art has always been a vehicle for people throughout their lives. One day, I was like, okay, something drastic is going to have to happen to kind of get him moving again.
In her very eloquent way, she says, her nickname for me is Mr. She says, Mr., you have a film degree. You have an arts degree. And you have a shit ton of action figures. Do something with it. And at first we had the back and forth. Like, well, these are collectibles. You know, I can't open that. You know, the value will go, you know. But as with all cases with my wife, she was right. So I did. Cracked my shit open. Had my setups. Put on some jazz. I closed my eyes and boom. I was back. I was Mike again. Part of my skin shed. I think I needed that. I needed to shed off the residue of an old life, and I became this other chapter. I became this other person.
As he started to feel better, he also felt like he could talk about it more. And now, for him, I think it's really important that he engages in this conversation so people don't feel like they have to be alone or hide that they're struggling with depression or feeling sad.
For me to be able to accept that help, you have to set your defenses down a little bit. You have to be vulnerable. I'm very attuned to the things I went through. And again, they didn't beat me. I'm vulnerable. I'm fractured. I'm broken. I'm all these things that people shun because that's not how a man is supposed to be. How is a man supposed to be that's been through the stuff that myself and a lot of other people go through? How are we supposed to be? It's not me then. I don't want to wear that. I don't want to wear that because I'm an individual. I've been through my pain. I survived my pain. I talk about my pain.